So then finally in the 15th verse, he's saying what will be the results of that remembrance of Krishna. Yat anutyasina yukta karma granthi nibandhanam chindanti govidastasya ko na kuryat kataratim. With sword in hand, intelligent men cut through the binding knots of reactionary work karma by remembering the personality of Godhead. Therefore, who will not pay attention to his message? A rhetoric question. So, if one remembers the Supreme Lord, then that remembrance, yad anudhyasina. So that remembrance, anudhya means remembrance, it acts as asina. Asina means swords. That remembrance acts as swords. And what does the sword cut? Karma granthi. The karma granthi are cut. Chindanti. So all the karma granthi are cut by the sword of remembrance. And therefore, that verse, Smartavya Satatam Vishnu Vismartavya no Jatu Chit Sarve Vidhi Nishedasyor Etayor Eva Kinkara, all rules and regulations are subservient to this one rule and regulation, and that is always remember Krishna, never forget him. Because it is that remembrance of Krishna which brings one to the platform of Naishkarmya, no reaction. Okay. If that remembrance of Krishna is not there, then one doesn't get much benefit simply out of the work that is done. Therefore, Bhagavad Gita 8 chapter 7th verse, Krishna is giving an instruction to Arjuna. What is that? Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmara yudhyacha. So Krishna doesn't say only fights. What he says? Mam anusmara yudhyacha. Remembering me, fights. Therefore that remembrance is very important, because ultimately at the time of death, what's our goal? Verse? Antakale cha mameva smaran muktva. Yam yam vapi smaran bhava. So the smaran is very important. That remembrance is very important, because it is that remembrance, whatever we remember, that is what is going to lead us to our next body. Therefore that remembrance is very important. Therefore, bhakti, devotional service, is not about mechanically doing things with our hands and legs or the other senses. It's not about the mechanical performance of the activity that so many people are doing. But what is actually going to purify us is the remembrance. Srila Prabhupada in the Chaitanya Charitamrita quotes that same verse, the Smartavya Satatam Vishnu, and he gives a very beautiful purport to that. And he explains there that in the current age, the easiest way to remember Krishna is to chant the holy names of the Lord. And therefore, he says, we have recommended in our Krishna Consciousness Society that every member, he says that a neophyte devotee must chant at least 16 rounds of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra on beads. So, and then he says, this is the first and most important instruction of the spiritual master. Among all the instructions of the spiritual master, this is the most important instruction. Because when we follow this instruction, then it is possible that we may remember Krishna during the rest of the day as we perform our different activities. Therefore, this is fundamental. It is the most important instruction, Prabhupada says. If it is the most important instruction, then on the rating of priority, where does it stand? And if it is first, when should it be performed? During the day. First. Easy to say. But then sometimes it's not practiced that way. Because there is no accountability for it. And one thinks, well, that can be postponed. That can be postponed because, anyways, who's going to ask for it? Sadhana chant, we will fill something. Who is going to verify? After all, the Paramatma has gone to sleep. We were just discussing that the Paramatma does not even blink his eyes. He does not even blink his eyes. But we blink our eyes so much we think the Paramatma does the same. It is called what? What's that called? One thinks, what one does, one thinks the other does not. What is it called? There's one phrase. And my fault. Whatever.
So Prabhuji, in the sadhana chant, why the Mangalarti is compulsory? Why not chanting in Brahma Muhurta compulsory?
I don't know.
Okay, that is administrative.
Guru order. Prabhupada order.
But the point is, it is that chanting of the holy names, especially in the present age, which is the Yuga Dharma, which is not different from Krishna, which is very important, the most important instruction of the spiritual master. Because if we do that properly, we attract the grace of Guru and Krishna, then it is possible that during the rest of the day, as we are doing in different services, it will be possible to remember Krishna. You can read, of course we'll be studying that later on, in the 4th canto of the Bhagavatam, the elaborate description in the teachings of Narad Muni to King Prachin Bharishat. He elaborately discusses on the importance of engaging the subtle body in devotional service. Because it is that subtle body which carries us to the next body. It's not the gross body. It's the subtle body. And therefore, transforming that subtle body is something which is very vital, which is very important. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada didn't name our society International Society for Krishna Work or Krishna Karma. Krishna Consciousness. There must be the consciousness of Krishna as we are performing our different activities. If that Krishna consciousness is not there, then one may get little sukriti, but not much purification.
Can you just, as you said, on beads?
Yes, Prabhupada says many places, on beads.
On beads. Because I see sometimes
You can see so many things and so many people can do so many things, but Srila Prabhupada, he gave beads, he initiated devotees and gave beads for what? For keeping for show.
Not calculating they want.
Why did he give beads then? What's the purpose of the beads then? There's so many places Prabhupada writes it, on beads. How did Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu chant?
On the speaker.
How did the Goswamis chant?
All beats.
Big beats.
Mahaprabhu also chant fixed round.
Yes.
One.
So the point is that's what the Acharya wants, and we need to follow that instruction.
Follow.
So there is no excuse for that. At least 16 rounds on beads. Then after that, choice is yours. But even then it's recommended on beads. But 16 rounds, there is no excuse. On beads. Very clear instruction. Are you convinced? Good.
We can do work engaging our body mechanically. We can chant mechanically, but can we remember Krishna mechanically without being favorable?
What do you think?
Kamsa is thinking about Krishna not favorably, so it's possible. But there is not many. It's more difficult, you know.
You want to try? Better not.
Yeah.
Mechanically,
But the point is that, anyway, we are not meant to do that anyways, isn't it? Not unfavorably, thinking unfavorably, that's not what is the definition of pure devotional service. So, why are we talking about that? And anyways, we can't do that. That was Kamsa. And Shishupal. They were two big demons. As Prabhupada in his lectures also says, Hiranyakashipu, such a big, now small Hiranyakashipus. So that is not, even that is not possible, unfavorably thinking of Krishna. Anyway, that's not our process.
No, regarding this chanting 16 rounds, if Prabhupada always specifically mentioned the word 16 rounds attentively, or many times it's not.
Why are you asking this question?
because recently I was hearing to Indrananda Maharaj, Prabhupada says that unless you chant the 16 rounds attentively, yeah.
So, in what sense is needless to say, isn't it? We are discussing all this, and how many times did we discuss that whatever we're doing, the purpose is to please Krishna. Then if we want to please Krishna, don't we want to chant attentively?
yes. Attentive.
Where's the question? We can chant inattentively, but will we please Krishna? And what's the goal of our practice? There are no shortcuts, unfortunately. We can invent our shortcuts, but no. The process is very clear. What is expected is very clear. Everything is very clear. Whether we want to follow or not, it's up to us. Okay. Okay, so now we are coming to this very important and relevant session. Of course, everything is relevant, but a very important section about the process of hearing and the effects of hearing. 16th verse. Shushrushrodhanasya vasudeva kadaruchi syama sevaya vipra punyatirtha nishevana. Out wise sages, by serving those devotees who are completely freed from all vice, great services done by such service one gains affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. Anyway, I just forgot to read some important statements from the previous purport. So Prabhupada, in the last paragraph of his purport says, therefore, any sensible man who is above the average man with a poor fund of knowledge must constantly remember the personality of Godhead by hearing about Him, by glorifying Him, by remembering Him, and by worshipping always without cessation. That is the perfect way of devotional service. So Prabhupada said, any sensible man must do this.